بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ما شاء الله ما شاء الله. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How's everybody? MashaAllah. Wasim, you weren't first, Habibi. I don't think you've ever been first, Wasim. Kamal was first, MashaAllah. Bas, assalamu alaikum, Wasim, Aboud, Ali, MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Very happy to see you guys. Inshallah, today I'm very excited for the topic. It might be a little bit longer, but we're going to see, bi'idhnillah. Shoo, Wasim, shoo, it lagged. Billah alayk, it lagged. Like every time it lagged. I love you too, Ali. Yeah, so today, inshallah, we're going to be talking about Fatah Makkah, right? The conquest of Mecca. And even calling it conquest, I feel like is too aggressive of a term, maybe. But actually, let me take a step back. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. So, after Hudaybiyah, so I know Khurram yesterday he covered Hudaybiyah, right? This treaty where the Muslims are now in a treaty with Quraysh and they're not fighting anymore. They're not at war. And so eventually what ends up happening, so this treaty, as many of you know, wasn't just between the Muslims and Quraysh. It was also with the allied tribes, right? So you have the Muslims and Quraysh. Quraysh was allied with a tribe called Khuza'a. With a tribe called Banu Bakr. And Banu Bakr was at war with a tribe called Khuza'a. So these two tribes, Banu Bakr and Khuza'a, were at war with their feuding tribes. And so Banu Bakr, what do they do? They allied with a superpower, which is Quraysh. And Khuza'a allied with another superpower, which was the Muslims. So what ends up happening is Banu Bakr, they ask Quraysh for some support, like financial and weaponry, to make an attack on Khuza'a. Quraysh supports them, gives them weaponry, and doesn't stop them at all, right? Which is in violation of their treaty. So Banu Bakr, they attack Khuza'a, and they kill many men from the tribe of Khuza'a. And so the tribe of Khuza'a, they send a delegation to the Muslims, say, hey, listen, this happened. We need you to defend us and to avenge our dead, right? Because they're allied. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, they verified their claims. Like the Prophet ﷺ went, he verified their claims. They figured out what happened, and he said that we will come to your aid. And so this is really, really important. The Muslims send an offer to Quraysh first, and they tell them, listen, you guys have violated our treaty, and our treaty is null and void now. And now you have two options. Option A, you cut ties with the Banu Bakr, with the tribe you're allied with, and you pay the blood money for the people that they killed. Or option B is that we're at war. So pick, you guys pick, right? And so Quraysh said, listen, they said, internally, they said to themselves, Banu Bakr is the only, major idol-worshipping tribe in Arabia left, and we don't want to lose that partnership. So we're not going to agree to their terms. And so this is super important that the Muslims actually gave Quraysh an out, right? Before the Muslims did the conquest of Mecca, they gave Quraysh an out. So it's not like the Muslims were like, boom, all right, we have this superpower, let's just go get them first chance we get, right? No, they gave them a chance to continue the peace, but they rejected it. So now the Muslims start gearing up for war. And actually, it was narrated that the Muslims were gearing up for war, and it was very, very secretive. Even Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu didn't know, and Aisha radiallahu anha, they didn't know when the Muslims were going to go out, from what direction, they didn't know the plan. They just knew, the Prophet ﷺ told them, get ready for battle, right? And so even the Prophet ﷺ goes to the extent where he sends a small delegation of soldiers in the opposite direction of Mecca. He sends a small delegation of soldiers in a certain direction to throw off Quraysh, right? To make nobody know what their exact plans are. And eventually, one of the Sahaba, he kind of pieces together. It's pretty clear, right? All the Muslims are getting together. Everybody's getting ready. So he's like, okay, the Muslims are probably going to attack Mecca. So this Sahabi, his name is Hatib ibn Abi Balta'a. And this Sahabi, Hatib, anhu, fought at Badr. So he's one of the Badriyun. And he had family still left in Mecca. And his family, he wasn't part of any big tribe or anything like that in Mecca. They kind of settled there, right? They're immigrants. So he was very afraid that his family wouldn't have anybody to defend them in Mecca, right? Whereas other Sahaba, their family members were part of bigger tribes, right? So they have more to kind of bargain with. So he sends a letter. He sends a letter to Mecca that says, hey, get ready. Something's about to happen, right? You guys are probably about to be attacked. And the Prophet ﷺ gets wahi from Jibreel, gets revelation from Jibreel that, hey, this is, somebody sent this letter, you need to go stop him. So the Prophet ﷺ sends Ali radiallahu anhu and two other Sahaba to go stop the messenger. Eventually they stop the messenger, they come back to the Prophet ﷺ, and they bring Hatib in front of the Prophet ﷺ. And Umar radiallahu anhu is there, and Umar is so upset. He says, Ya Rasulullah, just give me the order and I'll strike the neck of this hypocrite, right? He's ready. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he lets Hatib make his case. And so Hatib basically explains to the Prophet ﷺ his situation. He says, listen, my family is not from a big tribe. We immigrated there. We don't have like allies there or anything like that. So I wanted to give my family something to work with to keep them safe, right? Like he was worried basically, right? He was worried, and subhanAllah, it just shows us that the Sahaba were humans, right? Even though the mistake he made was huge, it was massive, right? It's you could say that it was like a treasonous act, right? But the Prophet ﷺ, after he said that, after Hatib made his case, the Prophet ﷺ said, everybody here heard your case, and everybody can testify that you just said the truth. And so Umar kind of says, Ya Rasulullah, like, what he just did was treason. And the Prophet ﷺ said that, basically, should I not forgive one of the men who fought at Badr, right? So he let him go. And he basically, what's really interesting here, and it's really important to understand is especially in we kind of have like a climate of cancel culture, right? That if somebody does something, like one thing wrong, then we just put an X on that person and we don't take from that person, ever again. And obviously, certain faults need to be weighed heavier than others. It's not to say that, anything wrong that somebody does should be ignored or anything like that. Especially when it comes to abuse and harm of other people. But we see here that the Prophet ﷺ looks at Hatib as a whole, right? He looks at his whole history and sees that, okay, what he did, it was wrong, it was a huge mistake, but we can kind of understand where he's coming from, right? And he's somebody who has a good track record, so we're going to forgive him. And so now the Muslims eventually, they depart from Mecca, and from Medina to Mecca. And the Muslims are departing 10,000 strong. 10,000 strong, right? A massive army. And so they eventually get to about, you could say 10 to 12 miles outside of Mecca. And at this, the way the landscape is that it's kind of wide open, right? And they get there at nighttime. So what does the Prophet ﷺ order the Sahaba to do when they make their camp? He orders them all to light a immense amount of campfires. Right, a huge amount of campfires, and I'm sure many of us have heard this. And the Sita book that I'm using as a reference said that there were 10,000 campfires lit that night. Right, so if you're sitting there in Mecca and you look out into the darkness of the desert, you just see this huge, the whole almost horizon lit up with these bonfires. And so Abu Sufyan, he's in Mecca. And he's with two others, and they have no idea this is happening. They have no clue this is happening. So they go outside of Mecca, and they look, and they just see this, immense sight. And they're like, oh, who is this? And some of them say, could that be Khuza'ah trying to get revenge? And Abu Sufyan says, no, they don't have a force that strong. Al-Abbas, radiallahu anhu, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, at this point, he approaches Abu Sufyan. So Al-Abbas was with the Muslims in their camp. And he left the camp to go approach Abu Sufyan. Why? He said that basically he knew that if the Muslims came to Mecca and the leadership of Mecca tried to fight back, then it would be just a bloodbath. They would just be absolutely, destroyed. They can't stand up to the Muslims. So Al-Abbas comes to Abu Sufyan and says, Abu Sufyan, listen, you need to go and seek safety with the Prophet ﷺ. You need to go to the Prophet ﷺ and seek safety right now. And so Al-Abbas, he takes Abu Sufyan with him, and they go to the camps of the Prophet ﷺ. And now, by the way, as a note, up until this point, up until just before the Fatih, Al-Abbas was living in Mecca and giving information to the Muslims and being kind of like a secret Muslim in Mecca. And so when eventually Al-Abbas gets back to the camps, Umar ibn Khattab sees him and sees Abu Sufyan with him. And so Umar basically, he's trying to make the argument that, listen, like this guy Abu Sufyan was, he was coming after us, he was hunting us, he attacked us, we should kill him right here, right now, like we have this opportunity. And so they go to the Prophet ﷺ, and Umar gets there first, right? He rushes to the Prophet and he says, Ya Rasulullah, like we have this amazing opportunity, let's kill him right now, let's get rid of him right now. And Al-Abbas and Umar start to kind of argue, and the Prophet ﷺ says, listen, everybody calm down. Abbas, take Abu Sufyan to your camp. Why don't you guys, everybody cool down? Let's talk about it in the morning, right? And so he kind of he dissipates that heated moment. So they come into the morning, and Abu Sufyan basically tries to make his case to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ kind of shakes Abu Sufyan and says, yeah, Abu Sufyan, isn't it about time that you accept Allah as the one and true God? And Abu Sufyan says, he says, by Allah, if there were any other, or rather he says that it's been shown to me that there are no other gods, because I have not been assisted whatsoever up until this point. Like if there were any other gods, they would have assisted me by now, but they haven't. And so the Prophet says, and isn't it about time you accept that I am truly a messenger of God? And Abu Sufyan replies, says, I've only known you to be honest and good, but I'm still unsure, right? So he still needs a little bit of time. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he says that, Al-Abbas kind of talks to Abu Sufyan and tells him, listen, just accept Islam and you'll be safe, right? Accept Islam and you'll be safe. And so Abu Sufyan kind of thinks about it for a little bit, and he accepts Islam. He gives his shahada. And so the Prophet ﷺ tells Al-Abbas, says, Ya Abbas, take Abu Sufyan with you. We're about to leave. We're going to march on Mecca right now. Take Abu Sufyan with you. Take him to this high vantage point, and keep him there until the army has passed. And what was the purpose of this? The purpose of this was that as the army is passing, Abu Sufyan is slowly seeing banners from so many different tribes. And he's seeing tribe after tribe after tribe following the Muslims. And he says to Abbas, he says, Ya Abbas, what an amazing kingdom your son has brought together. And Abbas replies to him, he says, it's not a kingdom, it's prophethood, right? هذا nubuwah. This is not a result of power struggle or anything like that. This is a result of sincere, true prophethood. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And so Abbas, he then gives some advice to the Prophet ﷺ. He says, Ya Rasulullah, Abu Sufyan is part of nobility, right, in Mecca. So you should do something that kind of honors him a little bit, because it was a hard pill for him to accept Islam. So the Prophet ﷺ, he says, this kind of famous statement, he says, anybody, when we get to Mecca, anybody who is in Abu Sufyan's home is safe. Anybody who's in their own home is safe, and anybody who's in the masjid is safe. And logically, the Prophet ﷺ is saying, anybody in their own home is safe. So why is he saying anybody in Abu Sufyan's home is safe? To give honor to Abu Sufyan, to make it easy for him to accept the message. And we see here, subhanAllah, something that we're going to see throughout this whole story. And today's session is probably going to go a little long, because the whole Fatih Mecca is a testament to the wisdom of the Prophet ﷺ, right? That every single thing he does is hikmah. So, for example, we look at, why did the Prophet ﷺ show Abu Sufyan? Why did he have Abbas show Abu Sufyan the entire army marching past him? Not because he wanted to flex his might, and we're gonna see the proof of that in a little bit. Not because he wanted to show off to Abu Sufyan, because he wanted Abu Sufyan to realize just how dominant the Muslim army is. So that when Abu Sufyan eventually goes back to Mecca, he tells everybody, don't even try fighting back, right? Don't even try fighting back. And that's what he did. Abu Sufyan, he runs back to Mecca and he tells the people of Mecca, a huge army is coming. Anybody who comes to my home is saved. Anybody who stays in their own home is saved. Anybody who stays in the masjid is saved, right? So basically, he goes back to his people and he doesn't rile them up. He doesn't get them ready for battle. He basically gets them ready to stay in your home and do not fight back, right? And And even though the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't have to give Abu Sufyan that special recognition, he took the advice of his uncle Abbas, and out of his hikmah, he wants things to go as smooth as possible, right? He wants things to go as easy as possible. This wasn't a battle of, like, getting them back, right? Or spite, or, proving the Muslim strength over the disbelievers. It was supposed to be a battle where the Muslims, where the Prophet ﷺ said that today is a day of piety and of faithfulness, right? Where the Muslims basically free the people from worshipping idols to worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the Muslims, they march upon Mecca, and they enter Mecca from 4 different sides. And they enter it simultaneously. Again, what is the purpose here? The purpose is to almost like smother them, so much so that they just kind of lay their hands down and realize that there's no point fighting back. And actually, all of the Muslims, when they entered, they didn't face any resistance except for Khalid ibn Walid's battalion. On one side, he faced a small resistance of a few people, part of them being Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl. And after a short while of fighting, they ran. They retreated. They immediately knew that we have no hope here. And so the Muslims are entering into Mecca, and the Sahaba are ordered that do not fight anybody unless they fight you. Avoid conflict as much as possible. And all of the battalions are saying, they're ordered to say as they enter, anybody who stays in Abu Sufyan's home is to be protected. Anybody who stays in their own home is to be protected. They're safe. And anybody who's at the masjid is also safe, right? And again, giving that special honor to Abu Sufyan as the de facto leader of Quraysh to make it easier for him and for those below him to accept the message. And so the Prophet ﷺ, now we go to him ﷺ. He enters the city on his mount, and sitting behind him is Usama ibn Zayd radiallahu anhu, right? The son of Zayd ibn Haritha. And one of the purposes of this, Usama ibn Zayd ibn Haritha was a freed slave. And so one of the purposes of having Usama behind the Prophet ﷺ is to show that on this momentous day, on this day where the Muslims are taking over, the leader of this battle and of this nation has the son of a free slave behind him. Meaning what? Meaning that these class differences mean nothing. These class differences are meaningless, right? He is raising up the rank of those who would be looked down upon, and showing the people that all of these made-up class differences where, you consider yourself nobility, you consider that person below you, all of these class differences mean nothing, right? And again, we're seeing the hikmah of the Prophet ﷺ. And what does the Prophet ﷺ do? What does the Prophet ﷺ do as he enters into Mecca, right? After 20 years, right? 13 years in Mecca, and the Fatih happened in the 8th year Hijri, in Ramadan, actually. In Ramadan. And so after 21 years of persecution, of insults, of attacks, of killings, of death, of torture, right? Of people calling him a liar, of people calling him Majnoon, of the Prophet ﷺ, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to come to the Prophet ﷺ and console him, right? And tell him, are you going to, kill yourself over these, these people who disbelieve? After all of that, how does the Prophet ﷺ enter Mecca? He enters with his head down, so low that his chin touches the back of his mount, right? His head down, reciting verses from Surah Al-Fatih. And what does this teach us? It teaches us that the Prophet ﷺ is, number one, attributing his success to who? To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost. And number two, that normally when a conquest happens, the leader of that conquest rides in on his steed, like proud, head up, chest up. And what is the Prophet ﷺ doing to show here, or trying to show here? Trying to show that the point of this battle is not to humiliate Quraysh. It's not to show the strength of the Muslims over Quraysh, right? It's just to do what is necessary, right? It's to fulfill the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's to free the people from worshipping the idols to worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a lesson for us to learn that the Prophet ﷺ, He wasn't looking for a like one of those movie moments, right, where like the main character finally gets back at those who were harming him the whole time, right? And they disgrace them and they put them down. He wasn't looking for that, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that never happened with Quraysh, with the Fatih. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam was looking to fulfill the command of Allah, and his actions show that, right? From honoring Abu Sufyan, from avoiding any kind of bloodshed, from walking into to Mecca with his head lowered, trying to do what? Trying to make it as easy of a transition as possible, right? And so one of the Sahaba later, I think it was Uthman ibn Talha, right, the one who has the keys of the Kaaba. He says, this is a day of great disgrace for Quraysh. And the Prophet ﷺ corrects him, says, no, this is a day of great honor and growth for Quraysh. Meaning, like, on this day, Quraysh is going to grow and flourish, right? And so look at the way the Prophet ﷺ is framing things. He's not framing it as a way that, finally we got back at these people who were harming us. He's framing it in a way that finally these people are going to receive the blessing of Islam. And the idols are no longer going to be worshipped at the Kaaba, right? And so when we have people who harm us in our lives, when we have people who do us wrong, we should really wish that Allah guides that person so that they can stop doing wrong, right? As the Prophet ﷺ, he said that assist your brother if he is a zalim or mazlum, if he's an oppressor or oppressed. And so the Sahaba, they say, Ya Rasulullah, we know how to assist if they're oppressed, but how do we assist if they're the oppressor? He said that you assist them to stop oppressing. And we see this example in action with the Prophet ﷺ. And something, again, like really amazing is the amount of hikmah the Prophet ﷺ has with Fatih Mecca. Because there are so many like sensitivities, right? You have the people of Quraysh who are being defeated. Like that's a huge hit to their ego, right? They're defeated, they're afraid for their lives. And so what does the Prophet ﷺ do? He he still gives them honor, and he still tells them that, your lives are preserved. You don't have to worry about being harmed or attacked, right? You have the Ansar from Medina, right, who are scared that the Prophet ﷺ is now going to leave them, right? He's going to go back to his homeland, and we're going to talk about how he resolves that in a little bit, right? And so there's so many sensitivities, but the Prophet ﷺ, out of his wisdom, handles every single situation with a like very mindfully, with a certain intent. It didn't just happen by accident. And so eventually the Prophet ﷺ, Bilal al-Habashi, Osama ibn Zayd, and Uthman ibn Talha, they enter into the Kaaba. And before this, he goes around the Kaaba, he does tawaf, and he destroys all of the idols around the Kaaba. And while he's doing this, he says, وَقُلْ, he's reciting the ayat, وَقُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلِ. Subhanallah. إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. That he says, and say, the truth has come, and falsehood has departed. And indeed, falsehood is something that is always destined, كَانَ زَهُوقًا, it's always destined to depart. And something that I want to pause here and say that is to understand from the story that we don't have to get all caught up with the plans of the disbelievers, right? We don't have to get all upset at what falsehood some people might preach. That know that, as Allah says here, إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا, that falsehood by its nature is something that will eventually dissipate. It'll eventually go away. It'll eventually disappear, just by its pure nature. And we don't have to stress about that, and knowing that Allah is with us and Allah is supporting us, as we see here in the Fatih. And so the Prophet ﷺ with Bilal radiallahu anhu and Osama ibn Zayd and Uthman ibn Talha, they go and they enter the Kaaba, right? And this is after the Prophet ﷺ ordered some people to destroy the idols and the pictures within the Kaaba. So they go inside, and the Prophet ﷺ prays inside of the Kaaba. And after they leave, the Prophet ﷺ, he gives the keys to the Kaaba back to Uthman ibn Talha, right? And Uthman ibn Talha, his family is the family that holds the keys of the Kaaba. And even though Uthman ibn Talha, back in the Meccan period, he refused to allow the Prophet ﷺ to enter the Kaaba, right? But the Prophet ﷺ, he still gave it back to Uthman ibn Talha, and he said that any person who takes these keys from you, and the understanding is from your generations as well, is a great transgressor, right? Is a dhalim, right? That these keys are to stay with you. And one of the things that this teaches us is the concept of add al-amana, right? That when somebody has a responsibility, you don't take that from them, right? You don't steal that responsibility from them. You give the trust and responsibility to those who are in charge of it. And in that way, what do you end up doing? You end up building people up. You end up raising people up. The Prophet ﷺ, he had this amazing talent that every single person, he was able to put them exactly where they needed to be, right? He didn't ﷺ try to do everything all by himself. He gave every single person their own responsibility, and that raised people up and gave them a sense of ownership and responsibility. And here we see the Prophet ﷺ doing that as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this in a verse. He says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهَا. Indeed, Allah orders you to give the trusts or like the responsibilities to إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهَا, like to its people, right? And when it comes to like working in Muslim organizations, this is really, really important, right? That to avoid stepping on other people's toes. That if somebody is, for example, like let's say somebody is in charge of registration, right? And I'm in charge of marketing. And somebody comes to me and asks me, hey, can I register late? I shouldn't be the one who tells them that, oh yeah, that's totally fine, even though like maybe it is. I should refer them to those who own that responsibility, right? And I've actually made that mistake once before, and I asked the person to forgive me, and they did. But the idea here is what? Is that when other people have a responsibility, we need to give them and respect the responsibility that they've been given. And one of the things that happened in the Fatih, and actually I meant to say this earlier, is that Sa'd ibn Ubadah, radiallahu anhu, he was one of the Ansar, right? And so the Ansar are kind of like, they don't have as much ties to Quraysh as the Muhajirun and the people as the Muhajirun, right? So the Ansar, all they know about Quraysh is that these people tried to attack our city, right? They tried to attack our city twice, Uhud and Khandaq. That's all the Ansar know about Quraysh. So Sa'd ibn Ubadah, he's coming to Quraysh, and he's fired up. And so he says, yeah, he's one of the banner holders, right? The four groups that entered into Mecca. He was one of them, and he was the standard bearer. And so he says, today is a day of, he says, yeah, Quraysh, today is a day of bloodshed, right? Like he's so fired up. And so someone tells the Prophet ﷺ that he said this, and the Prophet ﷺ gets upset, and he says, yeah, Quraysh, today is today is not a day of bloodshed, and he takes the banner away from Sa'd ibn Ubadah, and what does he do? He gives the banner to Qais ibn Sa'd, the son of Sa'd ibn Ubadah. And something that's really wise here that the Prophet ﷺ did is that while Sa'd ibn Ubadah made a mistake, he still didn't, hurt his honor too much, He didn't take the standard from the Ansar and give it to the Muhajirun. He didn't take the standard from one person and give it to another. He kept the standard in the Ansar and in Sa'd ibn Ubadah's family. And what does this kind of teach us? It's going back to the whole theme of the wisdom that the Prophet ﷺ had in this battle, and understanding again the sensitivities here, especially with the Ansar, who don't have the same connection to Quraysh as the Muhajirun do. And so the Prophet ﷺ gives it to his son, and kind of like retains the honor of Sa'd ibn Ubadah, right? He doesn't punish him too much or too harshly. And so I had something I wanted to share regarding that, but subhanAllah, it slipped my mind. And now we get to the point, the famous, part of this story, where after the Prophet ﷺ transfers the keys to Uthman ibn Talha, he orders Bilal to climb the top of the Kaaba and to make the adhan at the top of the Kaaba. And so this person, Bilal, who, maybe a decade ago was barely breathing. You could barely hear a whisper of him saying, Ahadun Ahad, right? Barely able to even say it. Now this person is at the top of Mecca, at the top of his lungs saying, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, saying the adhan. And so after all of these years of persecution and difficulty, the Muslims are now finally establishing the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the Kaaba. And all of Quraysh is seeing this amazing transformation. That this person that they knew as a slave only a few years back is now at the peak of their society, calling the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's something that is just absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Especially given the context of slavery and racial biases among the Arab at that time, that this was something revolutionary. And so, after this happens, the people of Quraysh are kind of sitting in front of the Prophet ﷺ, and they're waiting to hear what he's going to judge of them. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he asks them, he says, what do you think I'm going to do to you? And they say, we know you to be, a good brother and a good nephew, and we know nothing but good from you. So please forgive us. And he sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says that you are all forgiven on this day. You are all forgiven on this day. And this is before even any of them converted to Islam, which the majority of them did, right? This is before that even happened. But he said you are all forgiven, and they were given the option whether to convert or not. There were a few people, though, who were not forgiven and who were labeled that they were to be punished, and they were like they were essentially targets, right? Like they could be killed because of the crimes that they committed before. And even those people were given many chances to be forgiven, right? That if they came to the Prophet ﷺ and they accepted Islam, or they gave him bay'ah, that they would be forgiven. And many of them did, right? Like for example, Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl was one of the people who were marked as a target. He came to the Prophet ﷺ and he converted to Islam. And he was given some time to make that decision too, by the way. So it wasn't like when we read the seerah, it wasn't like these people were just like boom, like here are your targets, go get them, right? No, if anything, they were given many opportunities to receive that mercy, right? And subhanAllah, it really just shows one of the huge things about Fatih Makkah that is just phenomenal is that I don't think you could find in history any conquest like this. I don't think you could find that anywhere. Right? Where a people were persecuted and tortured. When they were in a position of weakness, they were tortured and attacked and killed and ran out of their homes, right? And slandered and right? You can keep going and going. The harms that came to them. But when time came for the Muslims to be on top, they not only were they just, I would say like it wouldn't be accurate to say that the Muslims were just, the Muslims were merciful. Right? Because justice implies eye for an eye, right? But the Muslims weren't just, they had mercy on those who harmed them, right? When they were in a position of power and when they were in a position to take more than what they did. No, rather they had mercy on the people of Quraysh, and and they made it easy for the people of Quraysh to accept the religion. And I want to just kind of bring this like full circle from the beginning, right? From the Prophet ﷺ telling Abu Sufyan that anybody in your home is safe, to the Prophet ﷺ showing Abu Sufyan the army walking by him, right? And all the different standards and tribes that were with them. Even before that, the fires on the horizon, right? When the Muslims set camp. To the Muslims entering from all different angles of Mecca, right? From four different directions. To the Muslims saying that anybody in their homes and in Abu Sufyan's home and in the masjid are safe. The whole point of Fatih Mecca is what? Is to make it easy for Quraysh to accept Islam. Right? To make it an easy transition where no ego is harmed and nobody's honor is lost. And at the end of this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals the surah that many of us know. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفر إنه كان توابا. That when the help of Allah comes and the conquest, right? and people are entering into Islam in droves, then glorify Allah. فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ. Glorify and praise your Lord and ask for His forgiveness. Indeed, He is the most forgiving, right? That on this day of conquest, of amazing success, of help from Allah, don't forget who gave you that assistance. Don't forget who got you to this point, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And something that I want to remind myself and everybody here is that every single one of us has our own struggles and difficulties that we go through, right? Every single one of us has times where we are the person at positions of weakness and the person at positions of strength, right? When it comes to like friends groups, or even when it comes to like work dynamics. And one of the huge lessons that the Fatih teaches us that we can very practically apply is that when we're in those positions of power, that we don't seek, not only do we, at the minimum, we have justice, but rather we seek ihsan, which is to have mercy, right? To have mercy on those who may have done us wrong before, right? And to not forget who is the one who gave us that strength, right? Where the Prophet ﷺ walks in, he's a conqueror, right? He walks in, he's after all of these years, of persecution, leading an army of 10,000 strong, he walks into Mecca, what? With his head down on his mount, praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's our example to follow, right? That when we're in the peak of our success, the moment where everybody expects us to be proud and happy and joyous, obviously we should be happy and celebrative, but we're not flaunting that power, right? We're remembering who is the one who gave it to us, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And subhanAllah, just the I don't really have much more content, but really the Fatih, especially as I was like reviewing it and reading it, it's just amazing. It's just amazing how merciful the Prophet ﷺ was, right? How there was no bloodshed. How there was so much forgiveness. How there was so much humility, right? Like when you think of a conquest, that's not the image that you think of, right? But this is the example of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Barakallahu fikum for joining me. And inshallah we'll see you guys on the in the finale, bi'idhnillah. Yeah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.